Hello and welcome back to the Live Reality Game Podcast. My name is Steven and I'm here for another episode of Behind the Game. In this series, I interview hosts and creators of different live reality games to understand how the game came to be and see what advice they have for other future creators. And here today, we're going to talk about a mole game, specifically the Mole Ohio. So first off, joining us is the producer of the series, Tim. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. You and I are both in academia and teaching, and so the end of the semester is nigh.
Yes. Last day of classes was yesterday for me, so it's just grading and faculty meetings. And yeah.
Joining us as well, she's not only a winner of Surviving Bloomington and a winner of the Mole Ohio, but she's also one of two co-hosts for this series, Rachel. Rachel, how are you?
I'm here, and that's what matters. But no, I'm doing good. I'm enjoying all the Christmas things that are happening.
And Rachel's a yin. She needs her yang, the mole from her series, for her foil and her co-host, John. John, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great.
So thank you all for being here today to talk about the Mole Ohio. And I guess let's start talking about like the history of the game. So your first season ran in 2019. What was the genesis of the game? How did it come to be?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of LRGs, it started before I knew what an LRG was or knew that that was like a thing that people did. Had no idea that there was this community of people who put these games together. And so it was really just like, me and my friends. And it was actually, there's some prehistory to that 2019 season too, because even longer ago, when I was in high school, I would do these mini mole games and survivor games with my friends as well. And so this was sort of like we haven't done this in like 10 years, let's do it again, with a little bit bigger scale, but not much. And so from there, I kind of like discovered that this was a thing, that LRGs did exist. And really actually the first mole LRG that popped up on my radar was Victory House, which I kind of stumbled upon through like Reddit and everything. And from there, it's just sort of gotten a little bit bigger each season. Season 2 was still kind of like a mixture of friends and LRG vets. And then from that, we kind of expanded to, our more recent seasons are on YouTube now. So that's kind of been the trajectory of it, I guess.
We have a shout out from a former
hi,
mole
Matt.
and veteran of the Mole Ohio. So hey, Matt. So season 1 happened in 2019. And you said it sounds like that was mostly friends at that point and kind of more smaller scale.
Yep.
And so you run the game. What made you then decide let's do it again versus just, hey, this is a one-off, this is a nice reunion, but yeah.
Well, it was when I found out that there were other people doing this sort of thing, and it, when I watched Victory House, and started discovering other LRGs, mole and otherwise. We have hi from another Matt. Yeah. But as I was like kind of wading into this world, I started getting more and more ideas for, future seasons. And I was like, I kind of want to keep this going. Of course, then in 2020, we hit, as everybody did, a massive roadblock with the pandemic. But thankfully, I think that kind of as everybody got stir crazy during lockdown, kind of led to a resurgence of these, or not a resurgence, but like a growth in LRGs, an explosion really, post quarantine. So kind of fed into the hype there.
And so going in this second season, what were you aiming to do different from the first season? Was it the casting? What was it the length? Was it the missions?
Yeah, so I was really interested in having both a larger cast and a more variation in terms of like not just everybody knows each other already, but bringing in some people who've done LRGs before, even though there were a lot of pre-existing relationships there too. It was kind of like a worlds collide type of feel to it, I think. And I mean, so Rachel was in season 2, and I don't know if she wants to bring in any of her perspective there, but yeah.
Yeah, Rachel, real fast. So, how did you discover the Ohio? Was this your first live game you had played at that point?
Yes, the Mole Ohio season 2 was my first dip into this whole world that I did not really fully understand the extent of it. It was interesting that Tim brought up kind of the pandemic and how that led to things starting to simmer, because I was with my friend Hannah on her 30th birthday pandemic trip where we were just in an Airbnb and had Zoom. Anyway, but the whole time we're on this trip, she has to do Zoom calls and group calls and is talking to the alliances. And I'm like, what are you doing? We're supposed to be hanging out. and she's like, I'm sorry, it's for this org. And I was like, what's an org? And so then after I stopped being frustrated, I was like, well, actually, I want to do this. And so she got me connected to figuring out how to apply to those. And I played a couple. And then the pandemic was over and she played Survival Challenge. I was like, well, how do I do this? Survival Challenge still waiting for you. But anyway, the Mole Ohio, I think season 2, one of Hannah's friends dropped, and Hannah was like, hey, Tim, I know someone that can play if you need a backup, because I live within 30 minutes of Wilmington where it takes place. And so I was an easy jump on woman to go, and it was a good first experience. It didn't have the result I was hoping for season 2, but it was so fun, and Hannah won that season 2, so it was neat that I got to see my best friend just completely rock it and me not.
I don't think I knew, or I had forgotten at least, that was your first live game. I'm not sure that I knew that. If I did, I had forgotten. So that's cool.
Season 2 has some pretty big hitting LRG legends in it too.
Yeah, John V.
Yeah,
Ahmed.
John V. and Rachel origin story. It both was a very short chapter for us, but it just so happened like my alliance, like I jumped in and was like, yeah, do this alliance, let's create chaos, and then every person in my alliance and then eventually me were gone. So we had a lot of heart and a lot of plans, but we're not good quiz takers, unfortunately.
And then, so going into season 3, I guess looking at from season 1 to season 3, what changed over the breadth of those seasons, Tim?
I really think that, so I mean, if we're comparing just season 1 with season 3, the main difference is by the time we got to season 3, I didn't know anybody from the cast. Like I didn't have any, other than Rachel, who was a returning player, I didn't have any like really pre-existing, long-standing friendship with anybody who was on that cast at that point. So that was really, I think, kind of the biggest difference between season 3 and especially season 1. But yeah, otherwise it's like, it's still taking place at roughly the same like time scale as the earlier 2 seasons. Similarly low budget. But just in terms of the people participating, it was more kind of casting a wider net.
And I
Real
think
fast. Go ahead.
Sorry, a big change too for season 3 was you asked Hannah to be like the on-screen host, and that really freed. All of a sudden, it wasn't all falling on Tim. So season 3 was a big step in kind of how can I branch out production so that I'm not running everything. And it was just interesting since I had been in season 2 to just see how much growth there was in season 3 just because Tim was allowed to do all of this creative stuff and setup without kind of the burden of also being on camera and exerting all that energy. And yeah, so I think that was a big step for you because then you see previous seasons, your production network continues to grow and the mole evolves.
Yeah. I think that, you're right. Season 3 is really that's when I first had like an actual production team, even if it was just, me, Ben, and Hannah. I've sort of like over the course of the past few seasons continued to accrue a really awesome production team, and that was the first time that it was not. I mean, obviously, in the first 2 seasons, I would kind of deputize people who got eliminated early and kind of have them help me with some logistical stuff as the game went on. But yeah, that was season 3 was the first time that I had like dedicated production assistants.
And so leading into season 3, John, how did you discover the Mole Ohio?
That's a good question. So I found out from my LRG mom, Corey Cluding, who was at the time running Columbus Big Brother, which was my LRG beginnings. I was friends with him before he started planning that, and then played a couple seasons. Found out he was doing the Mole Ohio, or was planning to do the Mole Ohio during the original dates for season 3. And then I was like, I watched them all growing up, loved it. I'd be interested in that. So I reached out. And then Tim was like, I can't remember if you immediately cast me or you're like, well, we'll have to see maybe next season, I think. And then when the dates changed, Corey wasn't able to do it. So I stepped in. I took that spot. And then what was it, Tim? Maybe like a week and a half before I found out I was the mole.
Something like that. Yeah.
So I got the materials and prep for that. So that's really how I found out. And Ben, I wasn't even sure if I knew that Ben had played before, but I had played season 2 of Columbus Big Brother with him. We were frenemies. I bested him by 2 places. And he showed up and I was like, oh, this is great. Ben's here. So that was kind of how I first got introduced to the Mole Ohio. It was the second LRG I ever heard of after Columbus Big Brother. So.
Yeah, one other change that I want to talk about is all your seasons have been filmed, but your first 2 seasons of 2019, 2021, those aren't public, but your 2022 to 2024 seasons 3 through 5 are all public, all are on YouTube for people to watch. What's caused that change?
So a couple of things. First, it's just sort of like with the first season, especially, like that was never going to be intended for public consumption because I didn't know that LRGs were a thing, that I didn't know that it was something that anybody would be interested in anyway. And so, we went into it just, by default, kind of assuming that it was just going to be basically within us and whoever else we wanted to share it with. But, and then with season 2, it was still sort of like, still some growing pains of like, I don't, I want to keep doing this, but I don't know if it's quite ready for public display at this point. So it was sort of like gaining enough. I wanted to gain enough experience with the production side in terms of like what's going on the ground, and then also like post-production stuff too. Like I wanted to be reasonably confident that I could put something together that would be worth watching. And having those first 2 seasons kind of as not, I mean, kind of like not practice runs, but like just, soft launches, I guess. And then also like kind of along with that, I know like some of the folks who participated in that initial season are like, I don't really want this on YouTube, which I'm like, that's fair. Like, and there's a reason why I am mostly behind the scenes now. Also, that's that I totally empathize with that desire for privacy, anonymity, facelessness. Yep.
So my experience in Victory House, the Mole season 3, I think we had like 2 dedicated cameramen. Then Carl also used the cameras. That you could never have enough cameras. You could never have enough footage. There's always things you want to capture, you're going to miss. I guess for the Mole Ohio, I know Ben is your dedicated camera person. Is it just him? Do you have more people? How do you ensure you get the footage you want, or has that kind of changed over time, your strategy when it comes to videoing a season?
So yeah, I mean, it's changed in a sense, like along with having a larger, crew, each time. So yeah, Ben is a dedicated camera person. I'm frequently on the camera too. And in the most recent season, we had Matt Gillum and Nathan both on camera at various points as well, during certain challenges. And when we're doing confessionals too, John and Rachel will lend their services there as well. So we've definitely, I guess, as we've evolved, kind of figured out ways to maximize what we're capturing. And sometimes the players will, if they find themselves having a conversation that they think is particularly important, but there's nobody there to capture it on camera, sometimes they'll set that up themselves too.
Yeah, I did love the Matt and Nina conversations that you were able to capture for this past season. Just like the some great tension of just like Matt just being so skeptical of Nina, and like them wanting to play with each other, but they can't because it's the Mole. Coming from playing and starting Bloomington with them, I really enjoy kind of seeing that chapter 2 of their saga.
I particularly love filming confessionals because I get to ask probing questions. And my favorite question asked this season was, who's your least favorite player and why? And they all hated it, but they did answer. And I think there are some that made the edit. Some of those answers that made the edit. Also, I will proudly claim the Mira confessional where she says she's bad at math because she's gay. It has nothing to do with me, but she did say that when I was filming.
So Tim, so how did you tap John and Rachel to become the co-hosts for season 4, season 5? How did that work?
So it was kind of a, I guess, natural next step from having tapped Hannah to be the host for season 3, since she had won season 2. And like you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, we have the yin and yang components, I think, with Rachel and John. They, I think, play off of each other really well and form really great foils for each other. And I do think like having 2 co-hosts is just a fun dynamic anyway, that you don't see in a lot of like actual mole games, like shows. But they did do that in one of the German seasons, like the 2020 reboot of the German Mole, and it was kind of a cool dynamic. So,
And so turning to John and Rachel, I guess starting with John, how was that transition? You were a player one year, now you're the host the next year. What has that role been like, and what I guess have there been challenges to the role that you've kind of learned to deal with?
Yeah, I guess I had a little bit of experience hosting just because I had done maybe my the first season of Columbus Survivor as a host, but I was also producing that one too. So this was my first gig just hosting. So it was a huge breath of fresh air to know, like, and also just to know the work that Tim does behind the scenes. Like, I know this is going to work out. It's going to be fine. It's all been thought of. Like, if all the hard stuff's been done, I just get to be the face and read the words off the script. So that is a big relief. So I learned a lot of lessons during my first Survivor season, and then came into Molo High with a little bit of experience, knowing the game and some of the people that have played. And so it was just kind of like a natural transition there.
Rachel, what about you?
I love it. You get to just show up and not have heart palpitations. All the hard work is done. I feel like I'm reliving my community theater days, showing up, reading my script, and just stepping right on stage and see what happens. I think you could see, like, I love the drama. Like, I love to be over dramatic, and like I think was that one season where I like swipe all the cards off, like just naturally. So it's so much fun. I was so excited to find out, not only when Tim asked, like, will you host, what can you co-host with John? I was like, yes, 100%. Could not be happier. And something I just wanted to comment on from a little bit earlier is just like when we were talking about the growth of the production team, I think part of the reason the team continues to grow is that Tim has started to foster a community, and people want to come back and they want to get involved. And I think that's just such another, like a next tier level for an LRG, when you really see community building. And it's not that you have to beg for volunteers, but people want to come back and be a part of that. And that's what I see in the Mole happening. With each season, it just keeps building, and I love it.
So, John, Rachel, if someone was the host of the first time any game, what advice would you give them?
I think that's hard for me to speak on, because often the host is also producing so much of the work. But I do think from what I've observed, and if you just go in excited and fired up, I think that pushes the energy up. Thinking of like Surviving Bloomington with Casey, he's building that energy and we get fired up. You see John at tribal councils and Columbus Survivor ask these just terrible questions, and you feel the drama rising. So I think also just go in confident, pretend you know what you're doing, and everyone's going to just buy it. So if you go in kind of like, I don't know, then people feel uncertain. But if you just go in, but I feel like I have it so easy because Tim has literally done he writes the script, the very words I have to say. Like, best case scenario, have someone be production and you get to show up for the day or 2 days or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd also say, like, you know, if you are also bearing the production role, like, just be prepared for constructive criticism from some of the players. And that's okay. We want that. Like, we want to get better. We want to have potential unfairness in the game challenge so it can be resolved if it can or whatever. But if you're not doing that, I agree with Rachel. Just like fake it until you make it, if that's what you need to do. But also, like, just have fun with the players if you can, when it doesn't impact the game. Like, just get to know them, joke along with them. That's the like my favorite part of doing this is getting to socialize with, you know, the new folks coming in and seeing them in their element working the game.
I think one thing that's unique about John and Rachel, your role, is that you're helping run the game, but you don't know who the mole is. You're almost, and you're not a player, but you're kind of playing along with the players. How has that been for y'all?
Oh, this has been fun. I actually, for the last 2 seasons, have kept a document in my notes app of round by round who I think the mole is. I'll do a first guess and a second guess. Last season, from the very start, every round I was put Night Meat, and or 2 seasons ago, and I put Matt like a couple times in the middle. And fun fact is, Matt did not secure a place to stay overnight for the first 2-day game that Tim did. So he announced that, and I was like, "Well, I'm driving back to Columbus tonight. You can come with. You can stay at my place. It's fine if you want to." So Matt does that, and meanwhile, you know, Matt's the mole. he knows he's going to play both days. He's better at that.
But like, that was brilliant because on one hand we're like, okay, it can't be Matt. Like, the mole would have known they were staying. Like, they would have, and even other players that don't know they're staying often just commit for the weekend. But then it's like, I'm getting texts from Matt and it's 2 a.m. and he's having margaritas with John. I was like, dang, you're the mole. You be studying, sleeping. You got a test tomorrow. What you doing?
We came home from the bar and I'm looking out on my couch where he's about to sleep. He's studying his dossier in front of me. Why? He has no reason to be looking at this packet. I mean, sure enough, in that door, he's putting on a show for me, trying to pretend like he cares what somebody's favorite color is. But I put his name a couple times, and then I got away from him. This last season, I got Wayne a little early, but had, you know, no proof. But I just was guessing him. But it's just, yeah, that's my favorite Mole Ohio lore is Matt not securing a place to stay overnight and then setting his dossier on my couch for an hour.
He was true deep cover right there.
Yeah.
And I think I even remember, I think that now I can't remember if it was Greg or somebody, like when he found out that Matt was the mole, like said, "Oh, so that's why he went back to Columbus with you." But it's no, that was, you know, unrelated, but it was just, yeah.
That is my favorite. My favorite, or at least out of the wildest thing about mole games, is kind of the ex post rationalization that occurs. The things people latch on to say, that's why they're the mole. It's like,
and we did have a lot of that in this past season. Yeah.
Rachel, have you had better luck or worse luck than John with discerning the mole?
Even when the writing was on the wall for Wayne this season, I was like, nope, it's Nina. It has to be Nina. Like, I would not accept, even that day, like late in, they're like, yeah, we've all figured it out. A production side of things. I'm like, nope, can't be. I just was in complete denial. So yeah, unfortunately, I do not have the best small radar.
I was gung-ho about Nina from the start. And at one point I turned to somebody and I said, it might have been you, Rachel. I said, either Nina's the mole and the worst mole I've ever seen, or she is the best player I have ever seen. We saw how that turned out. So
yeah, she was just talking with her hands so much in those early confessionals. There just was a lot of nervous energy, and I could not read it, and clearly did not. And Wayne I did one of his first confession. I didn't do a lot of confessionals this season, but I did a lot of their like first initial ones and kind of latched on too strongly to kind of what I was observing in those first reads. But it was fun.
Yeah, because I think it's the second challenge where you have the blocks, and like there's like 7 different penalties where people are handing Nina her block, and I remember initially like, wow, that's really most behavior, but I should have said like that's so over the top. Like the mole would never do something that blatant, most likely. And so I want to talk about the script, because I see you've mentioned it. I see you when you're reading, like you have like the script in front of you. How detailed is the script? How often do you go off script? Is there Tim there going like, don't you dare go off script? I wrote that for you.
I read it verbatim.
Yeah.
Shout out
I don't want to mess
to,
anything up.
I think, this season was I want to say the first time we had kind of like some special host coming in for the challenge and so Matt had his like completely memorized, and I was like, dang, you're making me look cheap right now. So maybe I probably won't, but I was like, maybe I should start memorizing. But sometimes there's so many specific instructions and layers of these type of challenges that I would be afraid to go off script or miscommunicate something. No, we had our share of off script stuff this season.
Yeah. Let's talk about the improvisation of Richard, right? You have the double elimination. Richard goes up, he offers a bribe. Kat goes to take it, and then you're like, pause it right now. So how often do you find yourself having to improvise or figure out rules in the moment? And then what did you learn from that occasion that you're going to apply for future seasons going forward?
So to answer the second part of that question, I think that we really realized like how important it is to be like, once you get your red screen, get up and leave the room. I mean, you don't have to leave the premises, but
just keep walking, don't look back.
Yeah. But no, like to not really have like any kind of I don't know, potential things that you say or do that could like contaminate how people are thinking,
including dropping postcards.
So I think that was the main thing that we learned, is that we'll kind of make that more explicit of like, and I mean, a lot of it boils down to the fact that since that was a double, there was kind of space between those 2 red screens. And, from what I understand from Richard, and I think he mentioned this when we were on here a couple weeks ago, that space between those 2 red screens is when the wheels were turning and when he kind of concocted this plan. So yeah, I think moving forward will be more, clear of like, red screen means you get up and leave the room. Yeah.
I thought though, you can go back and say, well, what if we could have done this, or this? But I think I just learned a lot from like, as a team, we came together. So once it was like, wait, we got to pause this. Production needs a moment. Like we can't just pause it. And so I was just really proud that we were not afraid to just take the time. We brainstormed a few different options.
Yeah, a lot.
And then we also ultimately landed on what we thought was the best in the moment and supported one another, and we came out unified. And I think that because we came out unified and kind of it with humility, it helped people be receptive, even if it wasn't their favorite way that it was handled. Overall, it seemed like there was as much peace as you could have in a very complex situation. And so I think that's an important thing, is like when unexpected things happen, they're going to happen because we are human and life happens, things get messy. When production can come as a team, even if there's side disagreement, there wasn't in this case, but sometimes you may be like, I don't know if this is best, but I can hear what other people are saying. Let's walk in unified, because you never want then someone to go off like, oh yeah, well, I didn't agree with this, and then it can really spiral. But I just think that's kind of an important takeaway for production communities, is like, do your best to listen well and then stand together as a team the best you can. Obviously, if there was something very unsafe or whatever happening and you had to raise your voice, but that, to me, that's a very different situation. But that was a takeaway for me, because I'd never we never experienced that, but I just walked away feeling so proud of being part of the team that we're on.
Yeah, because I know, like, with Survivor games, I've seen, like, stuff happens and you have to make a game time decision that's going to change the someone's game, and like having a procedure in place, as well as like ultimately who's like, if we're deadlocked, who we're going to go with, like who's our point person that's going to, like, they're going to make the decision when we can't come to an agreement, matters a lot. Like, I think it was Survivor Canada the 2019 season, like Final Four, like something happened, they're just like we can't tell who dropped first. What are we going to do here? Like, to figure it out. Let's figure out the tiebreaker in this moment. They had to make a call, and it had consequences.
Yeah. For my game, I rely heavily on Ben and his mind, and Kyle Gates, kind of like my right hand men. So yeah, that's kind of like my panel. Like if we have something, a rule that maybe is unclear or doesn't show up a lot, kind of go with that. But yeah, I'm really happy with the way our team in this game came to a conclusion and brainstormed, and it was relatively quick. I mean, it was maybe five or so minutes of discussion, but a lot of ideas were thrown out in that 5 minutes. But we kind of came to a mutual agreement really quick.
Yeah, and it was the plan that we came up with was like cobbled together from ideas that all of us were throwing out. So it was really like a collaborative discussion during those 5 minutes. And yeah, I think I was pretty proud too of us, because I really do think that we came up with ultimately basically the fairest resolution that we could have come up with. So I was pleased with this as well.
I want to step back and ask about the YouTube episodes. Tim, it amazes me how fast those come up, right? Most games, they'll film it and then they'll come out maybe 6 months or a year later. You're getting them out within like 2 to 3 months. What's your process when it comes to editing the episodes?
Yeah, so my process is that I have gotten really good at being really efficient with very minimal kind of processes in Final Cut Pro. I kind of know how to do what I need to do in Final Cut Pro, and I don't try to get too fancy with it. That's my first process. Second secret, I guess, is not so much like a strategy as more so a motivation. I'm motivated to get all of the episodes as close to edited as I can before the school year starts. So I kind of, I don't want to say I throw them together, but I really, buckle down and get all of them like 90% finished before the end of August, so that I can then just kind of week by week go in and do the remaining finishing touches on each one as they come out. And that's I guess kind of my, the motivation that I have there is just wanting to be able to have it out of the way and not be thinking too much about it during when I'm teaching, and vice versa.
I very much feel that with some summer podcasts I do, where like I need to have all these wrapped up before the semester begins, and I truly lose my mind. I want to kind of talk some more mole. I guess more overview of the mole games in total. In terms of cast size, your cast sizes have been, I think, relatively not small, but I guess small for a mole game, because you've run 9 to 10 people. Is that an ideal cast size, or what does an ideal cast size range for you look like? Because I know mole games have gone up to, I've seen 20 people.
Yeah. So we've had 9 or 10 every time except season 2, the last of the pre-YouTube seasons, which had 15. And that, I mean, so again, let's, rewind here. I was doing production solo at that point. That was too much. If I had a production team, maybe I could do 15 players again. But I also feel like once you get past like 12 or 13, sometimes it gets kind of unwieldy. But I do think like anywhere in that like realm of roughly 10 to 12 is a nice cast size. If it gets to be too many more than that, I think it almost becomes too easy for the mole to kind of hide. So I like, and I'm kind of also old school about it, like, the original format of 10 players, 9 players plus a mole is sort of near and dear to my heart. Including when I got the first season on DVD when I was like 13 or something for Christmas. So yeah, I think 10 is a good ballpark to aim for, but anywhere up to 12 or 13.
And so thinking about the game of the mole is all about the mole, and picking the right mole is always a challenge. And so what do you look for in a mole, and why was John the best mole of the 5 seasons you've had?
So I don't know if we have enough time to answer the second part of that question, but
you're gonna say that when Matt exists, yeah.
But
Matt was so good.
Yeah, I have people ask me that question, what makes a good mole, during like when I'm doing casting interviews, and I'm always like, you're really trying to get like a little clue of who to look for. But really the only quality that I think a successful mole has to have is being adaptable, being able to think on their feet and kind of adjust their behavior according to, what's going on, what other people in the game are doing, like if other people are being very like over with their sabotage, or, just kind of whatever the dynamics of the group are. That's kind of the main thing that the mole has to be able to do, is adapt accordingly. And also just like, if you as the mole know that like, okay, it's better if I end up in this group for this challenge, but then someone kind of strong arms you into doing something else, then you need to be able to change, change your course of action in line with that. So really it's just being adaptable and being able to fit into whatever kind of group dynamics there are. But also, to quote Queen Catherine Price from The Mole season 1, The mole wants the team dynamic to break down. That's the bottom line also. So kind of those two things are really, really crucial here.
Your strong arm comment reminded me of when Rachel strong armed me into being a pair that during the outside round where we found the hidden cache.
Right. So to give the story here.
Well, I was minding my business, and Rachel just was like, "I'm going to be paired with John for this round," and I was like, "All right." And then we get out there, and there is the temptation for the Joker. Was it a Joker?
Yep.
And she strong armed me into trying for that too. I was like, no, should we try to stall a little bit? But
I was really trying to read your reaction. I wanted to see like what you wanted to do. The only reason it all comes back to John has hazel eyes. I totally got lucky because I answered on my quiz, the mole has hazel eyes and Casey has hazel eyes. And when Casey went out, I was like, but I'm still here. And so I was like, who else has hazel eyes? And it was
hazel eyes
John.
And also a social worker. So those two answers.
So behind those hazel eyes is a mole. But
so John, as a mole, as a host of 2 seasons, what do you think makes a successful mole?
I think Tim nailed the bulk of it. I kind of took a little bit more of a chaotic evil route than I've seen a lot of moles take. I kind of leaned into it, and eventually there was a certain point where the last couple folks had got onto me, and I knew that, so I just kind of leaned in extra hard, made Rachel play rock paper scissors with me on an answer I knew was wrong, and I won. But I think it's just that. I think it's just that awareness of like, where's the group thinking? Are people treating me different this round than they were last round? And how many are treating me different? Are they sharing as much with me as they were before? Do I need to make amends? Do I need to camp it up and throw something so obvious that they'd be like, well, there's no way the mole would do something that obvious? You're constantly playing like reverse psychology with yourself as the mole, and I think you do as a player too. So I think it's just kind of like analyzing the situation and being confident with whatever direction you take.
And Rachel, as a mole hunter, what do you think leads to success for players in the game to find the mole?
There is a luck component. Those first early rounds, no one really knows. You might have a gut instinct, but and then I think observation, and then similar to what John said, noticing when people start treating you differently or are withholding information and why they're withholding information. I like the challenge of the mole because ultimately it all comes down to you. So yeah, you'll have people that lie to you. You can have people that can betray your trust, but it's you and that paper and the mole. And so you have a lot more agency and self-reliance in the mole compared to maybe some other types of games. And so you really get the opportunity to trust your gut and lean into it without maybe worrying on upsetting someone or hurting an alliance, and maybe compared to Survivor or other types of social games.
So one thing I enjoyed about this most recent season, Tim, was there was a lot of, I found there some of the challenges were inspired by The Devil's Plan, a show I really enjoyed. I'm curious, so where do you go for inspiration when you look to compose a season?
Yeah, so the short answer is that I watch a lot of TV. I am making my way through Right now, I'm making my way through the Ukrainian version of the mole that came out 10 years ago, and I finally was able to watch it. And I'm having ideas, or have like some things are resonating with me in that. So it's like I'll watch any kind of show like The Mole in some way or another that I can get my hands on. And if there's a challenge that seems like I could kind of appropriately scale it to, the time frame and budget and whatever that we would have, I make a note of it. And yeah, so that's, been watching a lot of The Traders, a lot of international versions of The Mole. I've been doing that for years now, but then when something like The Devil's Plan comes along, I'll check that out as well. Really excited for the Genius game, the British version that's coming out some point next year. Intel tells me maybe February or March, but I don't know. But yeah, so I just kind of, wherever I can find these sorts of
social
shows
deduction
that would have social deduction-ish elements to them. Yeah.
I will say, I don't know what I liked more, the bird calling challenge or the charades challenge this past season for the sheer joy of watching players try to do things they were really bad at.
Both of those were so much fun to relive as I was editing them, especially because, like, 2/3 of it is stuff that I haven't seen before, because I was only obviously in one of those 3 places for the charades game. So I didn't know what was going on in the other. I mean, I could kind of see on the Zoom call what the charades team was doing, but it was really fun to be able to see every angle of especially those 2 games.
So, looking forward in the future, what would you like to see from the Mole Ohio? Are you looking to just, hey, let's make sure we keep the game going years, make it bigger? Like what's your vision?
Gosh, yeah, my vision is to, I guess, build on the success of the past few seasons that have turned out really great, and have had really awesome casts. My hope is to continue getting more, generating a little bit more buzz, and getting more, getting bigger, like, casting pools of applicants. We had a pretty big pool of applicants for this upcoming season, so that's awesome, and I hope that continues. I think, beyond that, I want to keep figuring out ways to more, like, fully kind of emulate or recreate the experience of playing the Mole for the folks who play the Mole Ohio. Like, I want it to continue more and more fully, like, approaching that that kind of experience.
Do you have any dream missions or things you'd like to do that you haven't been able to yet that you think that would really strike true to the Mole experience?
I would really love to do something with, like, river rafting, but
Yes.
and I know there's also, like, there's, like, indoor skydiving places. There's one of those in Cincinnati. There's also a guy in Wilmington who has, like, this weird, like, really weird flying contraption where he's just like, he's like sitting in it. I don't know. Something more extreme like that would be fun down the line, but we'll stick with river rafting maybe as a more attainable kind of goal.
I will say one thing about
I
Tim.
want a Wilmington adventure in the city.
Ooh,
By city, I
that-
mean like town. You know how you have to, I guess a little Amazing Race-esque, but like where you plant clues like at the coffee shop we go to, or the Mexican restaurant, or the library.
I would like to do something maybe with the theater, with the Murphy Theater. That's
Yes.
like a big landmark kind of place. And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah. One thing about Tim and these challenges that he makes are some of the most, if not the most, creative, complex in a good way challenges that you will see in any LRG. I've yet to see or hear any challenge like composition to be as creative as what Tim puts out. Like his mind is crazy, and I know a lot of that comes from his experience of watching all of these seasons from various franchises and countries. But Tim's brain is really impressive. And I think that shows in these seasons that are on YouTube, and I'm sure it's visible in the ones that aren't. So,
And it's so complex, but it's so approachable. Like people can read a script and kind of understand it, and the players can play it. Like sometimes you can get these like really complex, interesting challenges, but then people don't really know what they're doing. So it's a really unique balance to have high complexity, but also an approachable, doable challenge.
Tim, Rachel, John, I think that I about exhaust all the questions I have. Is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't had a chance to get to?
I think one of the fun things that's like a claim to fame for the Mole Ohio is that everyone who's won has been a woman. So we have a string of 5 female winners, and that's pretty unusual for an LRG. So that's like a fun thing. I don't know what else. John alluded to kind of like the lost season, the season that never was. The original, what would have been season 3, that would have been the summer of 2022, when I caught COVID 2 days before, or I don't even know if it might have been just 1 day or something before we were going to start, and I had to reschedule. So that's another kind of fun part of the Mole Ohio iceberg, that lost season.
Who would have been the mole that season?
A guy named Jeff.
Okay.
A specific guy named Jeff, not just like I hadn't just picked that. Oh, I'm going to pick somebody named Jeff to be the mole.
I assume a guy named Jeff did not end up playing in the season, or but maybe a guy named Jeff will return someday for a future season.
Perhaps, I don't know. He kind of couple degrees of separation from Hannah. Actually, I think they went to college together.
Oh.
They like that was not something that either of them knew, really. But yeah,
I know you're in the casting process for the Mole Ohio. Is there anything for the fans out there you want to say and non-spoiler teases for the upcoming season, or stay tuned for next August, September when the episodes will come out?
Definitely stay tuned. Keep watching. Keep sharing, spreading the word. In terms of like teasery, spoilery things, everything is still pretty nebulous at this point. So if anybody has any suggestions about stuff that they might want to see me implement, I'm open to those. But I will say
Whitewater rafting.
In addition to whitewater rafting, but I will say that you'll definitely see some additional like returning guests, a la Matt and Nathan. That will continue to factor in.
John,
Otherwise, it's very in its formative stages still.
John, Rachel, anything you'd like to shout out here as we wrap up?
I just want to say, if you're a strong woman and you always get targeted because you're a strong woman, you just come play the mole and you run the show and be the next winner.
Period. Yeah, I've got 3 things to plug really quick. We got Columbus Traders coming up January 18th and 19th. So you can follow along on Instagram. We have already finished casting for that. In March, we got Golden Gates coming up, which is not my game. It's Kyle's, but it's the 21st through the 24th. I'll be helping with that. And Columbus Survivor All-Stars coming up May 24th, 25th. If you're an alumni and you haven't applied, you have about 2 days left. So get those to me. Preliminary decisions have already been made, so you got to put a good application forth to bump yourself in there. But yeah, so I'm excited for the beginning of first half of this next year.
Yeah, Ohio is the place to be for live reality games. It makes me kind of jealous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hotbed of activity.
We're booming.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to talk with me and telling a lot more about the history of the Mole Ohio, as well as kind of like the behind the scenes production and what makes production tick. I'm really super grateful for your time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been another episode of Behind the Game. Hopefully there'll be more to come in the near future. All depends on my sanity and my teaching. So we'll see how that goes. But Tim, John, Rachel, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen.